Welcome everybody back on behalf of Danilo Brez and myself and all the committee. We're about to end our day of presentation for this year with Rosina Scampino, and I would like to thank our panelists, Bertram Lehman, thank you for being here. Fernando, Micheline, thank you for being here. Chase Morin, our advisor. And Rosina, if you want to start sharing your screen, while you do that, I'm going to read a little bit about you. Drummer Rosina Scampino graduated from Conservatorio Manuel de Falla in Buenos Aires in 2012 and from Berklee College of Music in 2019. Her musicality and highly sensitive touch on the drums are what characterize her playing. A native of Rosario, Argentina, Rosina aims to create a sound that represents her South American musical root in the context of contemporary jazz. We're very, very glad and happy that Rosina decided to apply to the Institute at the beautiful year with us, and we're looking forward to your presentation whenever you're ready, Rosina.
All right, thanks so much, Marco, and thank you everybody for listening to my presentation today. My project is entitled Ndombe, the musical landscapes of Argentina and its African origins. So I started this project driven by the desire to know more about the music of my home country, because during all these formative years, I've spent most of the time studying and playing jazz and Brazilian music. But I've never taken the time to research about Argentinian music and its connections to the African diaspora, and I felt it was important for me to do it. I also wanted to incorporate some of these sounds from Argentinian music into a global jazz context, and at the same time narrate a fictional story about the erased chapter of the Afro-descendants in my home country. So here I'm going to start with a brief historical context of the African presence in Argentina. During the colonial times, the country participated in the slave trade, with the main port of entry being the Rio de la Plata, right in between Argentina and Uruguay. And although slavery in this area didn't reach the magnitude that it did in other parts of the Americas, it was a constant practice from the 1500s until the first half of the 19th century. In 1810, the year of the first independence revolution, Argentina's Afro-descendant population reached 30% in Buenos Aires and numbers even higher in other areas of the country. Today, the total Afro-descendant population is about 0.4%. Many historians have tried to explain this decline, pointing to the independence wars, the war with Paraguay, the yellow fever epidemics, and the heavy influx of European immigrants as the main causes. But there's one more important factor, and it was a process of widening that happened in post-colonial Latin America that some historians call blanqueamiento. Intellectuals and governments of the second half of the 19th century installed the idea of white superiority and promoted European immigration with the aim of improving the race. They saw Europe as a representation of progress and civilization, while Black and indigenous cultures represented barbarism. So as a result, today, Argentina is a mix of cultures, but keeps promoting itself as a country of European descendants. We have long denied the historical and cultural contribution of the Afro-Argentines. No mention to slavery was made in school when I was growing up. So this is where I come to the project and the music I've created. My research about the erased chapter of the African presence in my home country inspired me to write a suite of music based on the fictional story of an Afro-Argentine born a slave. The main character is named Manuel, and this narrative is inspired by a documentary about the Afro-descendants in the Santa Fe region, which is where I'm from. The suite I wrote is divided into 4 chapters: the plains, the call, the river, and the city. And they follow his story from being a slave to buying his way to freedom. So now for each chapter, I'm going to present you the narrative and the musical elements that inspired each composition. This is where we start, the plains. Manuel, an Argentine born in the late 1700s, the son of 2 African slaves brought to Argentina. He lived in his master's ranch in the countryside. Over the years, he learned how to tailor, earning small wages that he punctually paid to his owner. For the opening chapter, I wrote a tune inspired by chacarera, which is a folkloric style played all around the country. The rhythm in chacarera is based on a 2-against-3 polyrhythm that's present in many Latin American folkloric styles. And the phrasing of the main percussion instrument, the pombo legüero, is rhymed between binary and tertiary subdivision. And it sounds like this. So for this tune, I played bombo legüero, and I wanted to represent an open space, trying to imagine the landscape of the plains, and also represent the feelings of grief and the feeling of being stuck. Chapter 2, The Call. Years later, when his master moved to Santa Fe, Manuel had to follow. Santa Fe, a small colonial city at that time, danced to the rhythm of candombe. And here I wanted to introduce the word candombe. In the Bantu language Kikongo, ka means pertaining to, and Ndombe means black people. And the word candombe has been used to refer to the music, the rhythm, the dance, the place of gathering, and the mutual aid organizations of the black communities in the Rio de la Plata. Nowadays, candombe is mostly known as an Afro-Uruguayan musical expression rooted in the carnival festivities, but it's also played in Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay. And in Argentina, sounds like this. So for this tune, I played different percussion parts inspired by candombe and by another style called murga for the drum set part. And I wanted to represent the big sound of the percussion ensemble and sort of represent the feeling of joy of belonging to a community. Chapter 3. The River. After years of hard work, Manuel was able to buy his freedom and started a trip down the Paraná River to Buenos Aires in search of a better opportunity, knowing that life won't be easy for him and his family. So the Paraná River runs through Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, and it's calm but deep. And here I was inspired by the music of Argentinian composer Carlos Aguirre, and I wanted to represent the sound of the river using a constant left-hand figure and a cycle in 5/4, brushes, and sounds of water. And with the melody, I wanted to represent the feelings of hope, fear, and courage. Chapter 4. The City. So for the last chapter in this narrative, I wanted to imagine what would happen if our protagonist, Manuel, wakes up in modern-day Buenos Aires after almost 200 years of widening of Argentina. And musically, I think that Buenos Aires is represented by tango, and more specifically by the music of Astor Piazzolla. So the origins of tango are usually linked to the arrival of the European immigrants who brought the bandoneon. However, tango has its roots in candombe and milonga. So the milonga comes from the Cuban habanera, which arrived to the ports of Argentina and Uruguay in the 1800s. Here, the habanera was reinterpreted by the gauchos and payadores, who played the milonga beat in the guitar as an accompaniment to their improvised lyrics, sort of in this way. One of the most famous payadores, Gabino Seiza, was an Afro-Argentine. And for this last tune, I used the rhythmic style of the milonga, and I was also inspired by the music of Piazzolla. And I wanted to represent the everyday struggle in the big city, and ended the tune with a repetitive figure in the violin fading out, trying to represent the process of invisibilization that happened with the Afro-Argentines. So as conclusions, the contributions of the Afro-Argentines to our culture are undeniable and have been discussed by numerous historians and ethnomusicologists. However, Argentinians' Afro-descendant community is still fighting for recognition today. With this project, I also learned the importance of revisiting history. This project was a transformational process for me because none of this information was taught in school when I was growing up. So for the future, I want to collaborate with writers, dancers, and filmmakers to create visual content for this music. I want to keep studying and researching this music, tracing the connections with other musical styles of the region. Also expand these rhythmic ideas on the drum set, and most importantly, reach out to organizations that are currently working to promote Afro-Argentine culture and to restate the importance of Afro-Argentines in our history. Thank you so much to all the musicians that played and advisors. This is a list of discography that I've analyzed, the bibliography, sources, and special thanks to Marco, Danilo, BGJ faculty, and BGJ class of 2020, my family, my husband, and Gustavo and Lisa. So, thank you so much.
We would like now to move on and open up for questions or comments. And I would like to start with your panelist, Bertram Lehman. If you have any comment to Rosina, Bertram, welcome again.
Rosina, congratulations. I'm going to keep it very brief because we talked a lot. I'm very happy for this project that you put together, and you know, the different elements that came together, both rhythmic, and I've been, like I told you, in our meetings, I've been very impressed by the wonderful lyricism that's in your music. In many ways, my favorite is the river movement, and you know, how you managed to dissolve the meter there, all these different wonderful musical details that are in your music, and you know, I'm glad that we got to learn a little bit about some of these historical and social cultural backgrounds, and there were some materials that, as you have said, you know, they will take time to check out further, and you know, the project, wonderful, worthwhile choice, and so congratulations.
Thank you, Bertram.
Nando Michelin, I understand also you're part as a panelist, and you help Rosina if you want to ask Rosina or have any comment to share with us.
Yeah, first of all, of course, congratulations. It's a great work that you put together. I remember when we got together the first time before you started all this process, and we talked about the different styles. And I asked you a question that I'm gonna, you know, ask you to maybe expand a little bit now, which I think is very interesting when we talk about African rhythms in the Americas, to decide from the point of view of a jazz player, to decide how much you stick to the pattern, how much you consider the pattern first and then you open up, or how much you still just keep the pattern and the in your head and you play off of that. So you know, I know you put a lot of thought about it and all those stuff, and I think it'd be nice to share it with everybody.
Sure, absolutely. So basically what I did is to listen to a lot of recordings from traditional players, and I think for the first tune I sort of managed to capture the feeling of the chacarera and the phrasing of the main percussion instrument in the right cymbal, and sort of, but more from a jazz player perspective. I think I still have to keep working on the second chapter, because because of COVID, it was a bit challenging to have that interaction. So I recorded all the CE in a few hours, like my parts in a few hours at a friend's house, and and I didn't have the time to re-record my parts or like revision that, but it's definitely something that I'm going to do for the real recording.
Great. I mean, I can't wait to hear the final revision of all these. You know, if you can go into a studio and record it there with proper rehearsals, now that would be incredible. Great job putting this together without being rehearsing personally and all that. That's amazing. Good job. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Nando.
Rosina, for the benefit of all the teachers and people that have listened to this project for the first time, could you elaborate a little bit? I think a very interesting part of your presentation, and for time you could not really expand, but it's this idea of creating a fictional story based on your premise, you know, of this chapter of your country being basically canceled. And,
yeah.
and you know, I want to make sure that, you know, people understand that this story is actually written by you, and there's part of also your future project. If you want to elaborate a little bit more on this part and exactly how this is integrated in your project.
Yes, so basically when we were talking about this project with Chase, he suggested to me, why don't you try to think of a story, try to find testimonials or, you know, like historical facts that might develop into a story. And also at the same time, when I was reading the historical facts and listening to all of this music, I realized that I didn't want it to just present this as music, as okay, this is the element, this is, I wanted to talk about the issue. And the idea of this story came when I watched a documentary about the Afro-Argentines in Santa Fe, the region where I'm from. And this documentary started with just 1 minute of an actor portraying a slave. And that really shocked me. Like, even after reading a lot about this issue, like seeing that, it was like, again, a slap in my head. And so why that? So that's why I decided to put it in this story, because we are not used to talk about this back home, and I felt like I needed to put it in my project.
And you specified to me that this is something that you plan to continue writing or seeing in a bigger production. If you can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, I would love to do that, collaborate especially with writers who could, you know, describe this story in a more poetic way, and dancers. I would love to include, because each of these genres has a particular dance, so I would love to combine the story with the dance with poetry.
I would like to open for the advisors. I see there's basically everybody's here. If there's any comment from maybe you want to start, Chase Morin, since you were directly involved with the project.
Yes. Rosina, wow, this has been such an amazing journey. I really want to congratulate you because, you know, I've seen one thing, you know, to acknowledge is the improvements you made as a composer. You know, the amazing work that you've done to work on orchestration and to work on all the technical details that I think you've learned so much. You've grown. I know you've expressed a little interest in continuing that further, you know, and really getting even deeper into that. So I see this as a transformation process for you, which is really incredible, and congratulations. Also, you know, to me, what strikes me about this project is your research. You know, there was so much content, so much of depth of study to your project, which I think has, you know, is important because it seems like this is something that may be lacking, and this is an avenue that I think, you know, an educational component to this project that I could imagine going further, that you could really take this to places where these things aren't discussed, where people aren't making the connections back home and also here in the US and throughout the entire world, because I think some of these core issues come up again and again in different places, and you're someone who goes deep into those things and wants to do the research, wants to uncover the history and find ways of articulating that in such a clear and composed way. So I think you really like have the potential for leadership and education in that aspect, and I can't wait to see what you do in that regards. So thank you. Maybe I'll ask one question to you about, could you maybe tell us a little bit more about your field research? I'm curious about what this might be like for your friends and family back home, and what have you discussed with people? What do you think is the next step in regards to that?
Right. So I've talked with a good friend of mine who is a percussionist. We had a long conversation about this topic because we are so passionate about this. And I just feel like there's not enough conversation about this, because the racism in Argentina is so ingrained in our language, in our way of thinking. You know, that I was explaining that the ideal to look like Europe is still prevalent today. I haven't been back home for a year and a half, but I definitely plan to reach out to especially the community in Santa Fe of the Afro-Argentines that are fighting to shed light into this issue and see how can I be of support. In some way, I feel like this project is sort of tribute that I want to make, and sort of my way of protesting about this issue. I don't know if that answered your question, but yes, I think talking with friends back home and with family, I've talked a lot about this issue with my family, and I've been reading a lot about history. And the funny thing is that there's more history being written about this issue, about this topic, from American historians, not so much from Argentinian historians, only in the last decades.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Alan or Bruno, would you like to comment?
I'll jump in. Rosina, congratulations on this project and music. I learned some things about history and the traditional rhythms and so on that I didn't know, but particularly impressed by your compositions. They sound great, the notation looks great, and the recordings sound great. And I was really happy to hear that. What I understand from what Chase's comments were, that it showed a lot of growth and learning over the course of the past year. They're really effective, they sound beautiful, and I want to hear them more. I want to hear the whole things. So I wondered if maybe you could just talk a little bit about the what you learned about composition, and also I'm just interested to hear from everybody about how you dealt with this process. I mean, I know the basic necessity of sending tracks around and overdubbing, but how did you deal with it creatively and keep your voice as a interactive drummer? Because I love the way you play, you sound good on these recordings, you sound real, you're creating at least the illusion of interaction, and presence and energy is strong coming through the recordings from what I could hear.
Thank you, Alan. Actually, the compositional process, I based my writing in the narrative. I was just trying to follow the emotions related to the narrative. I knew for the first tune, I wanted to create that open space with a piano intro, and so sort of that was the the basic thread in the compositions, and also having the images of all of these landscapes that helped. And I've learned a lot by just trying to do this, you know, just trying to imagine having these images in my head, and okay, how would that sound? And it was a long process. I was like very focused these last 4 months and just doing only that. And I think I've learned some devices that I wanted to keep developing in the future. What pertains to the recordings, I just made mock-ups and recorded on top of those mock-ups, trying to imagine the solos on top. So it was challenging.
It's very effective. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Bruno.
Yeah. Hi, Rosina. Congratulations. Yeah, this is really, I learned a lot from this presentation. The presentation was very clear, by the way, and I understand that you know a lot about the subject you've been studying, and we try to squeeze everything into 20 minutes, which is easy to overdo it and try to relate too much information, but you really managed to narrow it down in a beautiful way. It's very understandable. The whole subject matter I find is, of course, very important, and I can feel that you are very passionate about it. So keep that going and find other people, as you talked about, that are as passionate about it. I could really see the story about Manuel being fully written, and about having actors and dance, like a multimedia thing, which I think would be really beautiful. A couple of things that stuck out to me was your compositions are really, really beautiful. Very interesting writing and orchestration too. I like the way you use the violin in the pizzicato accompanying wall, for example, not just a lush melody. Yeah, the recording sounded great. I think sometimes I even forget that it's all overdubbed. You know,
Yeah.
that has happened several times now. I forget, oh wow, that was actually overdubbed. You know, but because it really sounds nice, and I love your cymbal sound. The sound of your drums and your playing is really, really beautiful. So I wish you all the luck, and you're on to something really great. And keep it going, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bruno.
Thank you, Bruno. Oh, I see John is here. John, I wonder if you would like to.
Sure. Yes. Rosina, thank you for choosing a subject matter that's substantial and not only from a very current but an age-old problem of racism. I think that your scholarship was well formulated and well delivered. I liked the writing too. It's come a long way. The compositional thing is getting better. The orchestration thing. I'm gonna say one thing, and I want to challenge you when you're recording these things, to be much more picky about rhythm. There was many places where I felt like it wasn't really lining up and gelling in terms of all the overdubs. I know that's an issue when you have to do these things, but I do this often. I have to play to tracks that come in, and also been a studio musician for the last 45 years or whatever. So, and I'm still working on this. So I'm going to challenge you to be much pickier about how things line up, and do them, have people redo them if necessary, to make sure that they're really listening to the drums and the percussion, rather than just put a top part on and have it be drifting. Melodically and also harmonically. It has to, in order to have the clearest representation of what you're doing. I think your music deserves it. There was some beautiful writing. But because you're a drummer, and because the rhythm is the most important thing in music, I have to say, especially this music, especially because you're talking about African music, and the fact that their history has been erased. I think the rhythm has to be front and center. It has to be more powerful, more unified. So that's everybody involved. I'm not saying, oh, you know, you need to do. I'm saying everybody needs to take more rhythmic responsibility. But beautiful work, and I really enjoyed it. That's my only big challenge. Okay?
Absolutely.
Great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. I see Irini. You have any comment or question, Irini?
Thank you, Marco. It's been a pleasure to watch your presentation, Rosina. I knew about your theme months ahead, and your ideas seemed always very clear. And I really felt like you were, you know, going for it. And I think that what you chose is very valuable. This is something that a lot of people need to know. And thank you for choosing this theme. Yeah, congratulations, and thank you for this wonderful work and your, you know, your vision and your passion for this subject, which is most valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Irini.
Thank you.
Maestro Danilo? You're muted.
Rosina, congratulations. Great work. It's been an amazing honor to work with you and see how much you've grown and developed, find your voice, and really beautiful compositions. I side with what everybody has mentioned. It's great to witness so much progress. And today this is a beautiful day for all the projects, you know, that we have heard, because we have heard a connection that is getting more clear and clear in the way that the artist is perceiving their function in society in this era. The things that interest you, the young generation, we're feeling hopeful about that, and the topic that you chose is so in line with where we are right now. You are connecting an issue that is global, you know, and that a lot of people don't really know that you know, Chile, South America, there's a whole history that unites the whole America. Sometimes it's not completely known, it's not taught, you know. So this is a very relevant project in terms of that, in terms of composition, beautiful composition. You apply a lot of concepts. We talk about using a motif and then opening up zero gravity. I hear zero gravity with, you know, with combination of exploring ideas, development, windows, compromising. You know, it's a lot of things you apply. In saying that, there's some things that I want to point out that for me that I was left on the air a little bit. For example, I would like to know. This is a question I have for you. What is the most lasting effect of Black influence in Argentina, if you have to summarize? In terms of candombe or tango or
In terms of
milonga?
music?
Yes. Like, where, I'm a beginner. Where can I direct somebody to say, this is the most lasting effect of Black influence in Argentinian music?
I believe it's a mix of both folkloric and urban sounds. And if you have to I have to summarize all the rhythmic lasting influence in Argentinian music, I would say is this clave. Chak ku chak kum chak ku chak kum chak ku chak kum chak ku chak kum chak. And if you ternarize that, you get chak ku chak kum chak ku chak kum chak ku chak kum. So those two main rhythmic cells are very present in mostly all Argentinian music today, and I think those are the main rhythmic elements, and that's the African presence today in Argentinian music.
That's a very interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of room to, even the word tango. I think, for example,
Absolutely.
like in Cuba, you have rumba, Panama, you have tamborito, you have cumbia. So there's very defining, clear entrance point, for people all over the world. Let's assume that that is tango, okay? Because there were some things that what you were playing. We might have our professor Fernando come in and say, "Wait a minute, that's you from Uruguay," and
Oh,
it's not a whole debate. It's funny, it's beautiful, right? So there is political. There's a reason why this went this direction, and
yeah, I actually asked Nando about that, like the way and our countries fight about that is so stupid because
We just
we
we were one country when this all originated.
absolutely,
We got divided later in the process. This was already on the process when we got divided. So,
so that would be a good point to clarify in terms of like these
okay,
were two countries. I think that would be
yeah,
really important.
yeah,
Another question I have for you, and this is something that I just I learned when I went to Argentina. I didn't know this, but every time somebody referred to a symbol or what tango is, they immediately go to Piazzolla. Can you define the reason of that? Can you explain to us why Piazzolla? And
I
then
think
I'm gonna ask you about another character.
Piazzolla has managed to really represent the core feeling of living in Buenos Aires, of how Buenos Aires sound. Uh, and that to me is really strong in the way in. So I compare it with the way that Duke Ellington makes his music sound like Harlem or like New York. Piazzolla has that strong connection with Buenos Aires, with portraying that image. And he was very critiqued, and at the beginning, the other tangueros would say, "No, that's not tango." He was actually trying to create something else. He didn't say that he played tango. He said, "I'm writing music, contemporary music from Buenos Aires, but not tango." He wasn't very happy with that term, and I think he has managed to sort of extract the core of the African influence in tango with all those rhythmic counterpoint and his rhythmic way of playing and all those little gestures that came from the early tangueros who were black, and also put it in a context of classical music, mixed all that knowledge with what he learned of counterpoint and classical music. So, yeah, that's my take.
Great. I would just add another character to that because I think Piazzolla speaks to the global experience of Argentina and the world. But I think there's one person that really will also help clarify this point of reference to connect this area you are pronouncing. His name is Horacio Salgán.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Just for the way he looks and his music, you will hear the connection because I don't know if we all pay attention. There was a point you were playing claves that are in the south of America, they use in the south of the United States too, and second line. There's connection to this clave, even the whole person. That's an amazing project, Rosina. The one last thing I would say, do not leave the dance out of all of this. A lot of these things where they came through, and that connects to Africa because of the gatherings and the dance that implies and words. It took a long time to develop. So thank you for this beautiful project. I think it's so relevant in the moment we're living in the world.
Thank you.
And thank you for your parents to being here with us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Rosina, for everything you've done this year. And thank you to all of you, Nando, Bertram, all of the advisors, John, thank you so much, Irini, Gustavo, and a specific thank to Mary and Jennifer for your help from the graduate office. And this concludes today's presentation. It's been a wonderful day of presentation. We can be very proud of what we heard. And again, Rosina, congratulations, and I'll see you Friday at the final party.
That's right.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, and
So good.
goodbye.